Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Bet the Birds. It's week 15, Eliot. This year is just absolutely flying by.
It is.
Crazy game last week. The Birds couldn't hold on to the football, couldn't do much of anything right.
Yeah.
You know the question I'm going to ask you. Monday Night Football, Seattle Seahawks. We haven't beaten them since 2008. A 6-game losing streak. What happens on Monday Night Football versus the Seattle Seahawks?
I am not going to be bullied into thinking this Eagles team is not good. I don't care what people say. I don't care how people say their record. They weren't what their record was. This is a great football team. I believe it. I know it. I've seen it. I've covered it. They have a great quarterback. They have great line play. And yes, they have great coaches. Right now, to me, they are a hitter that is in a slump. They need a good at bat. They need an easy pitcher. They need Craig Kimbrell. And Craig Kimbrell is going to be in Seattle on Monday night. This Seahawks team is exactly what the Eagles need. They're bad on defense. Their offense isn't that good. They're desperate, so their season is falling apart. This is the opponent the Eagles need to get right. And they'll do it in prime time, and people can see that everything is okay. The Eagles are going to go one of two ways this season. It's going to fall apart or it's going to rebound. And I'm confident this team is going to rebound. And if they rebound, that starts in Seattle. So the line, I think you said, is down to 3 or it is sitting right around 3. I think this is an easy bet on the Birds. I think the Eagles go into Seattle. They send the statement I thought that they had a chance to send against San Francisco. They'll just send it 2 weeks later, but they'll do it in prime time. And I think on Tuesday morning or Monday night when the game's over, people will not be worried about the Eagles anymore. I think we're going to get a statement win from this team.
I love it. I love it. The disrespect, I know that they're a very highly criticized team in this town, and it's a week to week, and it is very, very disheartening for me to hear just the blasphemy of how they're not a good team, and people are really just trashing the Birds. They're just absolutely trashing them nationally, locally. They need to beat the living daylights out of somebody. Or they need to beat the living daylights out of the next 4 teams.
Yeah.
And you're predicting that that's going to be the case starting Monday night.
Coming off the Dallas and San Francisco game, I understand the frustration from fans. Those were ugly games. Those were games everybody was excited for, and it's probably the worst we've seen this team play in a while. But when things get tough, like, you lean on what you know. And the Eagles have shown us who they are over the last year and a half. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. And the Eagles have said what they value. They like getting the ball to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. It's a pretty good plan. One game of only targeting them is not going to sway me that their offense doesn't work. They're a team that believes in getting after the quarterback. They pay those guys. They draft those guys. And for a year and a half, they've been filled with guys that are able to do it. A few games is not going to sway me of that. Like, I understand that they were bad performances, and I understand the playoff things. And I'm sure come playoff time, we'll be doing a Bet the Birds talking about Eagles, Niners, and potentially Eagles, Cowboys. But that's a month away. Those opponents are not going to be in Seattle on Monday night. So while I understand the frustration, don't let 2 bad games against great teams at the end of a stretch against great teams sway you from the fact that when the Eagles play bad teams, they almost always win. Almost always. Since Sirianni and Jalen have become the head coach quarterback duo, when they play bad teams, they win. In fact, if you look at since the start of 2021, when the Eagles play a defense that's 20th or below in points allowed, they are 15-2. Since the start of last year, they're 9-0. If you have a bad defense, you're not beating the Eagles. The Seahawks, they have a bad defense.
Yeah, the thing is about the Seahawks is that they're not the Seahawks of old. They've been a team that's been a perennial defensive, minded, very powerhouse. This defense is very, very weak.
Yeah.
If you ask me, they're one of the worst, especially in the NFC. I think they can be taken advantage of. My angle here is the over-under. So the over-under sits at 47.5. The Eagles have had their issues. These matchups, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett still getting it done, and even Noah Fant and the 2 running backs for the Seahawks. They're pretty good. I think the Eagles, they need to just hold up their end of the bargain on offense, and this is going to be an easy over rocking chair bet for 47.5. What's your take, Eliot?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be a game with a lot of points. Although I will say this, if you look at the Eagles defense, when they've struggled this year, unless it's Sam Howell, who for some reason just has this team's number, But outside of that, it's been great offenses that they have trouble with. I understand the matchup concerns, like DK, they have great receivers. And the Eagles corners have not played amazing this year as a whole. But for the first 10 weeks, 8 weeks of the season, the Eagles were one of the top 10 pass defenses in the NFL in yards per attempt allowed. Like, where they've been hurt is opposing offenses like a Kyle Shanahan, like those guys, like Mike McCarthy in Dallas, guys that scheme open their players because they don't have as electric one-on-one guys that can win. So I think Seattle has guys that they count on to win one-on-one. But I actually think the Eagles corners in one-on-one matchups are going to be okay. So the Seahawks do not have a great offensive line. That's a major difference between some of the other opponents they've played. And their quarterback, while Geno is going to play, he is banged up. So you're not going to get 100% of Geno. I agree the Seahawks are probably going to put up in the 20s. So I'm not saying it's going to be a shutdown thing. But I do actually think this matchup is better than people think when it comes to just allowing the Eagles corners to match up with the Seahawks corners.
Well, you mentioned Geno being banged up. I watched him really, really move the football at will almost against the Dallas Cowboys just 2 weeks ago. I know he is a little banged up. When it comes to player props, are we going to fade Geno?
That's a tough one. I mean, I would probably go over on Geno just because, to your point, I do think there's going to be points scored in this game. And the Eagles, they do allow yards. Like, teams move the ball on the Eagles. Where I think the Eagles will be good is limiting the points. The Seahawks have one of the worst red zone offenses in the NFL. They have one of the worst third down offenses in the NFL as well. Where they actually do a lot of their damage is deep plays, big plays to DK. I think he averages around 17 yards per catch this season. He's been a threat either over the middle of the field and breaking tackles or going deep. So I do think that Geno could put up some yards, but the points itself, like I think it's 47, you said it was, I think the majority of those points will be Eagles. Obviously, I think they're going to win the game, but I could see the Seahawks getting like 21 and the Eagles being in the 30s. I think they'll move the ball, but not score a ton of points.
So you mentioned DK Metcalf. We have to have some sort of an answer for him because their offense goes as he goes. If he's having a big game, they seem to be able to hang with teams. What's going to be the answer to slowing down or shutting down DK Metcalf? You were pretty much right on with Bradley Roby last week. I mean, he did a great job. If you look at the stats, he kept CD under on his total, and a lot of people on Twitter were really, really coming after you. You were right. Is that going to be the same formula this weekend?
I'm used to getting come after on Twitter. It's okay. People like to at me. But I mean, I would say this, like when you look at DK physically, it's hard to think of anybody that can match up with him, right? He's just like probably the most physically dominant receiver in the NFL. But I will say, like, his game is not down the sideline speed. His big plays come from missing tackles and then running after that. And he does have breakaway speed. But I think that Bradbury, he's not one of those smaller receivers that Bradbury traditionally struggles with. I do think Bradbury could potentially match up with him one-on-one. And maybe you see Slay stick to a Tyler Lockett. As you mentioned, Bradley Roby has done well in the nickel this year. So I think the one-on-one matchups are actually decent. Now, again, I think they're going to move the ball. I just think the Eagles will stop them when it matters. So for the DK over, I mean, he could hit it on one play. You look at some of the big plays he's had this year, 60, 70-yard catch or even 2 40-yard catches, and he's probably going to hit his over. So I think I might take the over on DK, but I think that their corners are actually set up to handle these Seattle Seahawks receivers pretty well.
Well, the hot issue that I love talking about, Jalen Hurts and running the football. One of the positives that I take away from that just atrocious game against the Dallas Cowboys is it looks like Jalen Hurts might be back in terms of his burst, his speed. I know it was on the turf down in Dallas. He looked really good running the ball up until that fumble. So you take that out of the game. I think I think that in effect made them not have him run the ball as much. Maybe they were a little leery after that. And, obviously the fumble just killed you.
Yeah.
What's going on with Jalen? Is Jalen back as a runner?
Yeah, I thought he looked good running the ball against Dallas. Now, obviously, the fumbles are a major issue. And you wonder how often the Eagles are going to be willing to call these quarterback draws or designed runs if he's going to be fumbling the ball. Like, we talk about it from a health perspective, but from just a purely trusting Jalen to hold on to the ball, I'm not saying they've lost trust, but it's something they have to think about with how much he has struggled to hold on to the ball this season. So I feel like I've been pretty spot on all year with my picks. The Jalen rushing yards thing is something I cannot get a read on because it seems to be week by week as to where they decide they want him to run the ball. I agree he looks good running it. I think he's looked mostly okay running it all year outside of maybe a week or two right after the injury. So it is always tempting to take the Jalen over on rushing yards because the Seattle defense is very bad. And now they do have good linebackers that could potentially impact, whether they spy him or how they want to try to handle him. But I do think that he looks good as a runner. So I've lost a lot of money doing it this year. I guess I'll just keep doing it. Just sprinkle a little something on Jalen. But I think that he remains a threat to run the ball.
Don't lose the faith. I think I know you love my opinion. I think Jalen for the next 4 games is gonna he's gotta be Superman.
MVP race. It's the MVP race. This is his chance to win MVP. If you look at it, a few weeks ago, it felt like the MVP Bowl was going to be Patrick Mahomes and Jalen. Then it felt like Dak and Jalen. But I think these next 4 weeks, he has a real chance to go back and to win the MVP award. They have 4 very winnable games, 2 of which are in prime time. A lot of people are going to be watching. Dallas, if they end up as the 5 seed, you cannot give the MVP to a 5 seed. I don't care how good he's been. You're not getting the MVP if you don't even win your division. So that brings it down to Lamar, Brock Purdy, and Jalen. And Lamar could certainly take it. But Brock Purdy, I just don't think the votes are going to be there for him yet. I don't think people respect him at this point as much as they should. I think Jalen coming close last year will actually help him. We just saw with Joel Embiid, he almost won MVP the year before, and then he got those votes the second time around because of how close he was before. So if Jalen can put up big numbers, like you're saying, over these next 4 games, I think he's plus like 1,000 now to win MVP or like plus 850. He's certainly fallen down. I think Jalen MVP odds is a really good bet.
I do too. I think that from what I saw in that Dallas game, he's going to turn it up. He's going to turn it up, and he's going to take that ball, and he's going to run. He's not going to fumble, and he's going to will this team to 4 straight wins. That's my take on it.
I agree with that.
So prime time extra down. The Birds are back in prime time again. The best NFL promotion. Mm-hmm. We got a $20 bet on a same game parlay. Win or lose, you're getting a $20 bet back. All right, you already gave me a couple of the legs right now. Birds laying the 3 points. We're taking over on Jalen Hurts in terms of rushing yards. Who's an over on the Seattle Seahawks that is hitting against the Birds this weekend? Maybe a Noah Fant, maybe Smith-Njigba.
Noah Fant is someone I would look at. His over-under is never that high, and for obvious reasons, he's like the 4th option on that offense. But we've seen the Eagles linebackers struggle stopping tight ends. He's someone they're willing to get involved. He averages, I believe, around 4 targets a game, and I think that'll go up this week. So if you want to look at Seattle, I would look at the over on him. But I'll give you 2 anytime touchdown scores for the Eagles. There's been so much talk this week about how they only got Goddard, Smith, and A.J. Brown involved. Well, let's look at some other Eagles then. The Eagles are a team that when they're accused of having a problem, they address it quickly. I think a DeAndre Swift anytime touchdown, but I'll throw another one at you. How about a Quez Watkins anytime touchdown? This team struggles with down-the-field plays. They haven't really gotten Quez involved. Sirianni loves to prove people wrong. I can already see him kind of saying something to the camera and joking about it in the post-game presser. Maybe a Quez Watkins anytime touchdown this Monday night to kind of silence the people who say they can't get more of their receivers involved.
Eliot Shorr-Parks with a bomb. I like that one. Throw that on your tickets. That's going to put some juice on those same game parlays. I really, really like it. You mentioned DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of in between. Maybe I take the over rushing for Hurts or I take the over rushing for DeAndre. You mentioned the linebackers. I do think they're going to want to try to keep Hurts out of the, crosshairs of Bobby Wagner. That's for sure. Right. But like we said, the Seahawks have a soft defense. Is this, shaping up to be probably a big game for DeAndre Swift?
Well, what about DeAndre Swift over on total yards? Because Sirianni did say this week that they need to get Swift more involved in the passing game. And when you look at how like that Kansas City game this year, when their offense was struggling a little bit, they got the ball to Swift on a screen play. He got a big play out of it and ended up being a big moment in the game to get their offense going. As you mentioned, I think Seattle is going to be focusing on Jalen Hurts to keep him in the pocket. That's something their linebackers will be preoccupied with. So I think that Swift there could be some big plays to be had there in the passing game. And I also think after Sirianni said repeatedly multiple times this week, we only, the passing game goes through AJ, Devontae, and Goddard. other guys are going to be open. I think you'll see those players benefit from it. So Swift, I agree, maybe over on the rushing yards because the Seattle rushing defense is not that good. But I would maybe do the total yards because I could picture him getting 2-3 catches this week. And when he gets in open space, he's a very dangerous player.
Yeah, I think that's the safe way to go with the rush and receiving combined total yards for Swift. I'm definitely going to be adding that one to the ticket. All right, my last question for you, Elliot. It came out this week. Derek Gunn, he had a quote from somebody. I don't think they named it right. It was an anonymous source, which we always love those. The predictability of the Eagles. Have the Eagles become predictable in terms of offense?
No, unless the predictable thing is dropping the ball. I mean, this is a team that has moved the ball up and down the field. They have. They did it against Dallas. They did it in the first quarter against San Francisco. And they've kind of shot themselves in their own foot. I don't think they have an offensive philosophy problem. I don't believe their offense has fundamental issues. I don't believe that Brian Johnson doesn't know what he's doing. I don't think that Sirianni doesn't use enough motion. This is a team that has turned the ball over, from Jalen's perspective, almost twice as many times as last year. 3 times against Dallas. And then against San Francisco, he trips in the open field when potentially I thought there was a touchdown to be had if he doesn't fall. So I don't think that the confidence should be lost in this Eagles offense. I think that they're going to keep putting up big points. And again, the defenses they're playing now are way worse than they were before. So I understand why the leak is concerning. But I would respectfully disagree with that player. I think that the offense is going to be fine once the players start executing a little better.
I love it, man. I'm all set. Primetime extra down. I got my same game parlay. We're definitely laying the points, taking the birds.
Yep.
And I think Jalen, he's got to do it. Like you said, the MVP is on the line. It's there for him to take if he can really put together 4 straight impeccable games. And I think he's going to do that. Eliot, anything else you have to add? You always have something.
I got to get to practice. So, yeah, I think I'm good with that. But again, I would just say, don't lose the faith in the Eagles. I understand it's tough. I understand emotionally there were 2 tough games. They have shown you who they are. They are a great team with a great coach and a great quarterback. Don't lose the faith. Keep believing in them unless they lose. Then we'll talk next week about who's on the hot seat. But I think they're going to win.
Awesome, Eliot. All right, that is week 15 of Bet the Birds in the books. Eliot Shorr-Parks, the best in the business. We'll see you next week to gear up for Christmas football.
Sounds
Philadelphia
good.
Eagles versus the New York Football Giants. Eliot, sayonara. Good luck at practice, and we'll see you next week.
Talk to you soon, man.